17 years after we waved goodbye to the adventures of the last Enterprise, we will finally be reunited with Jean-Luc Picard when the highly anticipated Star Trek Picard beams onto our screens in January 2020. As the incredible trailer for the series showed, this isn't the same Picard from all those years ago. Clearly some momentous events have transformed his life, but in order to fully understand this new chapter, we need to understand the man himself as well as the rest of the familiar faces who are set to return. And what better way than to revisit key episodes of Star Trek that best showcase the journeys our long lost friends have been on. Here are the essential episodes of Star Trek to watch before Star Trek Picard. With the former Starfleet captain the star of the show, it makes sense to look at the episodes that really showcase Jean-Luc Picard's character and the most significant milestones in his life. One episode that beautifully illustrates Picard's strong, unwavering moral principles is The Drumhead. Following an explosion in the Enterprise's engine, sabotage is suspected. Retired Admiral Nora Sati begins an investigation that then turns into a witch hunt against those who she feels are not upholding the ideals to which she herself adheres. However, her motivations, which she believes to be noble and true, are ultimately built upon her own prejudices and biases. As we will see Picard do in many other episodes, he delivers a speech in strong defense of civil liberties against impending fascism. Lessons we would do well to heed in today's ever more divisive world. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard showcases Picard's unwavering principles. Star Trek is all about holding a mirror to society, and the lessons from this episode may be especially pertinent to Picard's new show. Everyone makes mistakes, but what if you had the opportunity to go back and fix those mistakes? This is precisely the opportunity that Q offers Picard moments from death on the operating table in the fantastic episode Tapestry. We know Picard as a person who makes only informed decisions, but in his student days in Starfleet Academy, he was a much more hot-headed, reactive person. This would lead him into trouble when he was stabbed in the heart after getting in a fight, which resulted in him having an artificial heart. The same artificial heart that was now responsible for his life or death situation. Q offers Picard the opportunity to rectify how he acted that night. Taking him up on the offer, Picard finds his life subsequently transformed, but not for the better. Without having come face to face with his own mortality, Picard gets used to taking the safe option throughout the rest of his life, meaning that he would achieve none of the greatness he had otherwise accomplished. His past actions, including his mistakes, are what made him the person he is today. Picard, like everyone else, is the sum of his experiences and actions, both good and bad, and he is comfortable with the way his life turned out. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Q has had a huge influence on Picard's life. Picard knows the importance of seizing opportunities and would rather die than live a life of mediocrity. Another Picard-centric episode and another powerhouse performance from Patrick Stewart. While on a dangerous mission, Picard is taken prisoner by the Cardassians. There he is tortured by Gul Madred to divulge confidential information on the Federation. But this battle of wills becomes personal as Madred is determined to break Picard through humiliation and pain. He insists that although there are 4 spotlights, Picard must respond there are 5. However, Picard refuses to bow down to the very end, insisting that
there are 4 lights!
Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Picard has incredible willpower and refuses to be broken down. He would never freely give up confidential information. In a wonderful send-off, this 2-parter finale to The Next Generation is a true love letter to this amazing series. All Good Things finds Picard jumping between 3 different times in his life. The present, 25 years in the future, and 7 years earlier on the very day he took command of the Enterprise D. All the while Picard is trying to solve the mystery of a temporal anomaly that could cause the death of humanity before it was even born. He would eventually learn that it was Q who was behind the time shifts, with humanity's trial that began with the very first episode of TNG still ongoing. Thus, Q's appearances in the very first and very last episodes of the series was a lovely way to bookend the show. One very interesting thing about this episode is that the alternative future Picard glimpsed was bleak, with the crew changing and drifting apart from each other. Picard even finds himself tending to his family's vineyard all alone and suffering from a degrading rare neurological condition. Unfortunately, this future would seem to be prescient, as this seems to be precisely the situation we find him in during Star Trek Picard, albeit without any apparent signs of his illness. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Q deeply influences Picard's life once more. Picard's relationship with his crew runs deep, but what made him turn away from this life? Among the Star Trek Picard trailer's biggest surprises was the involvement of the Borg, with which Picard has a lot of history. It was in the Next Generation's Q that the Borg were first introduced. In an attempt to humble Picard, Q flings the Enterprise D into the path of a powerful, malevolent race of beings. Half machine with a hive mind, the Borg were an incredibly advanced, relentless enemy, hell-bent on assimilating all intelligent life it encountered in their never-ending quest to better themselves. Despite the best efforts of Picard and the Enterprise crew, Picard was forced to admit to Q that this was one enemy that they could not best or even flee, and thus had to ask for Q's help to save the ship, thereby demonstrating his humility and understanding of his own limits. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. This was the first appearance of the Borg. It was Q that introduced Picard to the Borg. But this meeting with the Borg would not be Picard's last. Widely regarded as one of the best episodes of The Next Generation, the epic two-parter The Best of Both Worlds finally brought the show kicking and screaming from under the shadow of the original series. Having been alerted to the presence of humanity in Q, the Borg set course for Earth, and it was in The Best of Both Worlds that we saw this incredibly powerful race invade the Federation. Although the Enterprise just barely managed to escape a Borg cube attack, it did so at great cost, with Picard captured and assimilated into the Borg collective to become Locutus of Borg, an intermediary for the Borg to talk to humanity to more efficiently assimilate Earth. The Enterprise crew would eventually destroy the Borg cube, but it came at great cost, with over 40 Starfleet ships and over 11,000 people lost, including the wife of Star Trek Deep Space Nine's Benjamin Sisko. Although Picard was rescued, his assimilation would leave a lasting mental scar, having been unable to resist being used as a tool for death and destruction. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Demonstrates why the Borg are so feared and hated. Picard's assimilation is a core part of who he is. Where The Best of Both Worlds was a rip-roaring action-adventure, the third part of what could be regarded as a trilogy moved away from the Enterprise and space exploration and brought Picard back to his family's vineyard on Earth, the same vineyard Picard would find himself during the events of Star Trek Picard. The episode explored the emotional aftermath of Picard's assimilation. As a person, Picard was used to power and being in charge of his own destiny, but the Borg forcefully stripped all of that from him to leave him helpless as they used him to kill thousands. We also meet his brother Robert, his wife Marie, and their son René, as we are given a glimpse of the life Picard left behind when he joined Starfleet. Unfortunately, we would later learn in Star Trek Generations that Robert and René died in a fire, and the centuries-old Picard family line would therefore likely end with Jean-Luc. This feeling of loneliness is echoed in the trailers for the new series. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Picard's family was very important to him as he chose not to have one himself. His relationship with the Borg is personal and he continues to be haunted by his time as Locutus. What can be said about The Inner Light than that it is literally one of the best episodes of television ever created. Family showed the life Picard would have led if he had not pursued his career in Starfleet, and we know from the events in Star Trek Generations that a family was something Picard truly longed for, and this episode gave Picard precisely that. Struck unconscious by a beam from an alien probe, Picard experiences an entire life, fathering children, having grandchildren and growing old with a loving wife, all in the space of moments. Remembering this episode still gives me chills to this day. It also brings me great sadness to think that a person who gave so much to help countless worlds across the galaxy ultimately ended up living in what looks like solitude, having left the organisation he loved and gave his life for. And I have little doubt that the Rescan flute, which holds such importance to Picard, will make an appearance in the show. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Picard's experiences in this episode are a major milestone in his life. A flute was heard in the teaser trailer, so surely the Rescon flute will show up in the show. Following the events of the Best of Both Worlds, the Borg would not be seen again for over a season. In Borg, the Enterprise discovers a single survivor of a crashed Borg scout ship, third of 5. Taken on board the Enterprise, Picard and Starfleet Command hatch a plan to use the drone to destroy the Borg. However, the longer the drone is disconnected from the collective, the more his individuality begins to re-emerge. Despite his deep reservations, Picard eventually realizes that the drone, now named Hugh, is capable of independent thought and self-determination. Hugh would decide to return to the collective in the hopes that he could change the Borg for the better from within. And of course, Star Trek Picard will bring back Hugh. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Explains Hugh's backstory with Picard. Further demonstrates Picard's hatred for the Borg. We would find out how Hugh's future unfolded in the action-packed two-parter Descent. The return to the collective didn't work out as Hugh had planned, as his individuality began to spread through the collective and resulted in the Borg becoming discordant and dysfunctional. A colony of lost and frightened Borg would eventually find temporary saviour in Lore, Data's evil twin brother, who promised them the chance to become a superior race. However, Lore would begin to experiment on them, trying to remake them in his image. Hugh himself would eventually re-emerge to help defeat Lore and assume leadership of the colony, and we will finally learn in Star Trek Picard what became of him and his followers, although it would seem from the limited information from the trailer that Hugh's luck perhaps had not improved. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Adds more information to Hugh's story. The independence of the Borg looks like it will be directly relevant to Star Trek Picard. Is that Hugh's original Borg cube in the trailer? But of course we know that Hugh isn't the only former Borg to be returning to our screens. The first trailer had a pretty big surprise in store, particularly for fans of Star Trek Voyager.
What the hell are you doing out here, Picard? Saving the galaxy?
So, it only makes sense to revisit the two-parter that saw the crew of the Starship Voyager first meet 7 of 9 tertiary adjunct of Unimatrix 01 all the way in the Delta Quadrant. 7 was sent over to Voyager to act as a liaison between the Borg and the crew in their alliance against species 8472, but would end up having her connection to the collective severed. 7 would eventually become a valuable part of the Voyager crew, all the while slowly adapting to become a human individual. Although 7 was known for exhibiting little emotion and speaking in a formal machine-like tone, 2 decades of integration into human society has clearly led to her speaking and acting in a much more naturalistic way. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. This was the first appearance of 7. 7's experience may be particularly relevant for the series. But Hugh and 7 weren't the only reveals from the trailer. The biggest surprise was left for the very final seconds.
I can see that, Captain.
Alongside Picard, Data was one of the stars of the Next Generation, so his appearance is an incredibly welcome one. But who and what is Data? For a great deal of backstory on him, we can go back to the Season 1 episode Data Lore. Here we find out that Data was created by Dr. Noonien Sung, but he wasn't the only android to be created. In fact, Data has a volatile, perhaps even evil, twin brother called Lore. Thus, this provides an explanation of why Data was built the way he was, without emotions. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Provides a great deal of Data's backstory. Introduces Data's evil twin, Lore. Data and Lore would continue to butt horns throughout the series, and one of Brent Spiner's greatest performances was in the episode Brothers. After Data abruptly commandeers the Enterprise, he steers it towards a mysterious planet, where he is greeted by his long-believed dead creator, Dr. Noonien Sung. It turns out that Sung had activated a homing beacon in Data, so he could return to his maker to receive an incredible gift, an emotion chip. Unfortunately, the beacon also brought Lore to the world, whereupon he deactivated Data and killed Dr. Sung in order to steal the emotion chip for himself. The emotion chip would eventually be returned when Lore was deactivated in the episode Descent Part 2. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Data's creator always intended for him to strive to become more human. Data's emotion chip could perhaps still be around. The Romulans will feature heavily in Star Trek Picard. It is therefore useful to remind ourselves of the history of this secretive, conservative race. Unification is known for bringing Picard face to face with Spock, as the latter was negotiating a reconciliation between the Romulans and Vulcans because of a shared common ancestry. Picard had previously met Spock's father, Sarek, and would have the unfortunate task of informing Spock that his father had died. However, he was able to give Spock a unique gift through a mind meld, the memory of Sarek's love for his son. This story also features Sela, the half-human, half-Romulan daughter of the Enterprise D's former security officer Tasha Yar, but from an alternate timeline. Yes, it's complicated. Commander Sela would play an important role in the Romulan Empire's covert attempts to destabilize the Federation. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Provides information on the Romulan Empire. Sela could still possibly be alive. The Romulans are often portrayed as a nefarious, scheming race, so it's a pleasant change when we get to see the different side to them. In Season 3's The Defector, a high-ranking Romulan officer named Jarok defects when he discovers plans for a war with the Federation that would put countless lives at risk. Jarok is a patriot that believes in the core principles of the Empire, but he acts to prevent war by sharing information with the Enterprise in the hopes that his homeland and his daughter could be saved from a misguided war. Unfortunately for him, the information he had received was planted so that the Empire could test his loyalty. The shame of his betrayal would be too much for Jarok, and he took his own life, leaving behind a note for his daughter, a note that could never be delivered until the Federation and Romulans found peace. This portrayal of Romulans finally allows us to realise that they aren't so far removed from humanity after all. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Romulans are a highly patriotic race. Gives a more human heart to the Romulans. Wait, am I really suggesting you watch the reboot that destroyed the Prime Universe? Yes, but bear with me. As much as the reboot is divisive, it also portrays a part of Star Trek history that will be fundamental to the world we find Jean-Luc inhabiting in Star Trek Picard. Namely, we see the Hobus star going supernova. This incredible explosion would move at multi-warp speeds and result in the total destruction of the Romulan homeworld, Romulus. Thus, the once proud and fiercely protective Romulan race would suddenly find themselves effectively becoming refugees. Is it perhaps events linked to this disaster that led to Picard leaving Starfleet? Fortunately for those who aren't fans, it's only a few minutes of the film and it's well worth reminding yourself of what happened. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Romulus is no more. Where does that leave the Romulan Empire? Was this disaster linked to Picard leaving Starfleet? And was it perhaps linked to the Borg? And finally, how could this list not include the last appearance of our beloved stars? Star Trek Nemesis may not have been the greatest film ever to grace our screens, but it is the final film featuring the TNG cast, and that's crucial to understanding where the story picks up in Star Trek Picard. By the end of the film, Picard has said his goodbyes to his first officer and Chancellor, as Riker and Troi got married and Riker becomes the captain of the USS Titan. And both will feature again in the new series. Also, Beverly Crusher was set to depart for Starfleet Medical on Earth, and of course Data sacrificed himself to save Picard. Although there are hints that elements of Data may have been saved in the B4 android prototype, the Picard trailer suggests otherwise. Key reasons to watch before Star Trek Picard. Gives us the final whereabouts of the TNG crew. Where does the B4 android fit in? Constructing this list was a warm reminder of the incredible journeys we have had the pleasure to be a part of with Picard and his crew. It also served to underline how much Picard sacrificed to be in Starfleet and the respect with which he was held. The event that made Picard turn his back on his former life must have been something that fundamentally shook his beliefs. Did Starfleet betray him? Thank you for watching. How is Data alive again? Why did Picard leave Starfleet? As well as Seven, Hugh, Riker and Troi, will we see Beverly and Worf? Will we see Hugh? Be sure to click the like button and subscribe for more videos from the world of science fiction and science fantasy. For more Star Trek and sci-fi news, then please follow me on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Peace.